Morning. Good morning, everyone. Bom dia. I hope you guys are doing well. My name is Josué Prado, and I'll be talking about opportunities and challenges in using artificial intelligence in power and energy systems. So I want to start this presentation just saying thank you to Dr. Luciane for all the support. It's a pleasure to be here. We have been collaborating for a few years, and it's my first time here in Santa Maria, so it's a great pleasure to be here. This is the outline of my presentation. I'm gonna start talking about my background, a little bit about the university that I work for. We're gonna talk about challenges and opportunities of using AI in power and energy systems, and some of the uses of AI at the Colorado School of Mines. So let's start talking about my background for those of you who don't know me. So my name is Josué. I'm gonna talk a little bit about my trajectory from 2012 until now. So I got my bachelor's in electrical engineering from Santa Catarina, UDESC, Universidade do Estado de Santa Catarina, in 2012. My dad was a professor at UDESC, and he was the one who convinced me to pursue electrical engineering. His area of research was control systems and automation, and he collaborated with Professor Luis Marques here in UFSM. And then I started my career. I worked for WEG for a few years. I worked in the power generation system department, working with turbo generators and hydro generators for small hydropower plants and thermal power plants. In 2013, I started working for Whirlpool. I was a technology control engineer at Whirlpool, working for Brastemp and Consul, working the food preparation systems. So my team was responsible for designing control systems for food preparation appliances, such as stovetops, microwave ovens, and in general. So that was a big change in going from power systems to microelectronics, gigawatts, kilovolts to, milliamps, microamps. But I learned a lot. So that was a very good experience. I developed my English a lot working for Whirlpool. I had a lot of opportunities to interact with people all over the world. I had a boss in Brazil, and I had a boss in Italy, and another one in the United States. So I had 3 bosses, But I decided to go back to WEG. And why is that? Because I had a passion for power and energy systems. Even though I learned a lot here, my big passion was power. So I got an offer to go back to WEG, and I basically came back to the same department working with power generation projects. And this is the first thing that I want to talk about. A lot of people, they are not sure about the areas of research or career development. It's totally okay to make changes. You don't have to stick with the same area forever, So if you don't like a specific area, it's totally fine to change it. Try something new, and then you can find out what it's most exciting for you, okay? And then in the same year, I got a scholarship to start a PhD in the United States. So that was a big decision for me because I went back to WEG in 2015, and 6 months later, I got this scholarship offer, to start my PhD. So I had to make this decision. Stick with this company or pursue a PhD, which was a dream for me since my dad was a doctor as well. So I decided to start my PhD. In 2015, I moved to the United States at the University of Nebraska-Lincoln, and I started my PhD in electrical engineering. And my thesis was focused on electricity markets, the integration of distributed energy resources into electricity markets. And that was a hot topic at the moment because there's a lot of discussions in the United States of using DER for market operations. So DER providing a lot of different services and how to compensate, how to monetize those services. So that was a big area. And then I learned a lot, and we had some very interesting results and publications that I can share with you later. During my PhD, I had the opportunity to work for NREL. So I went to NREL, National Renewable Energy Laboratory. It's one of the department of energy laboratories in the United States, and this is the only one that focus 100% on renewable energy. Okay, all the other ones, they have some research in power systems, but they have other research areas. This is the only one where 100% of the research is focused on renewable energy. Okay, so I think Dr. Luciane had the opportunity to visit NREL, and then it's a great laboratory. They have amazing facilities, and my project that I participated on was they were looking at options to increase reliability and resiliency of power systems in South America. So they were looking for someone who could speak Portuguese and a little Spanish. So that was a very interesting opportunity. When I worked here, I visited Brazil. So I went to Rio de Janeiro to talk with the Empresa de Pesquisa Energética, EPE folks. I visited Chile, Colombia, and Argentina, and we wrote basically a report summarizing a lot of opportunities for greater power system resiliency and reliability in South America, and how the United States could help with this energy transition. Okay, so I can make the report available for those of you who are interested. And then in 2020, I started my career as a professor. So I went to Washington State University on the west coast of the United States, not Washington, D.C., but Washington State. And the city was called Vancouver, but not Vancouver in Canada, Vancouver in Washington, okay? So I spent 4 years there doing research, teaching, and developing a power system curriculum. Okay, so one of my goals was to develop a very comprehensive curriculum in power systems, and then it was a very nice experience, but I had another dream, to go back to Colorado. So here, I had the best 2 years of my life. It's a great state. I enjoyed a lot, and I decided I want to go back to Colorado. So last year, I had the opportunity to go back to Colorado, and I started working at Colorado School of Mines. Okay, and Colorado School of Mines is in the same town as NREL, so it's like 2 kilometers away, very close, and they have a lot of collaboration. Okay, some of the faculty at Colorado School of Mines, they have joint appointments with NREL. So it's like 70% working for mines, 30% of the time working for NREL. So there's a lot of collaboration and opportunities in terms of research and development. And some of the NREL folks, they teach at Colorado School of Mines as well. Okay, so there's a lot of opportunities. And this is just a picture. When I was living in Golden, this is 2020, the year that I got my PhD. I went to Colorado School of Mines to take my graduation picture. And I was like, one day I'm gonna work here. So that was a dream for me that came true 4 years later, okay? So I don't know if Lucas remembered this building here. This used to be the old Hall of Engineering, and now it's no longer a building for engineering. It's a very old building from 1894, very old. All right, another thing that I want to talk about before we get into artificial intelligence is the importance of networking. So I'm going to start talking about how we develop this collaboration here. So the year was 2018. So the year that I actually started working for NREL. So I was living in Nebraska, and I got this internship in Colorado. So I drove my car to Colorado, and one person, she's a Brazilian, by the way, Caroline. She was working in the same department that I would work at NREL. And she invited myself and my wife for dinner. She was like, oh, this is your first day here in Colorado, so I want to welcome you guys. Let's have dinner at my house. There's going to be another Brazilian dude here, so you're going to meet another Brazilian. And when we went there, Lucas was there. So he was hanging out, he was doing a doutorado sanduíche, right, at Colorado School of Mines, and we started a lot of conversation. And he was like, oh, my PhD advisor wants to visit NREL. Can you arrange a visit for her? And I was like, for sure, we can do that. So Professor Luciane was interested in visiting NREL, and I think you had some collaborations with Dr. Marcelo Simon in some conversations, right? So I arranged this visit so Luciane could visit NREL and, you know, see all the facilities. And then after that, we started some collaboration. So let's keep this working. Let's keep this collaboration. And we have been working together for the past, I would say, 6 or 7 years in a lot of different research projects. We published 3 papers. We had scholarships for students from Federal of Santa Maria. So 2 of, you know, students that graduated here went to the United States with full scholarship. We developed some short-term courses, some virtual workshops. We participated in 5 graduate committees, okay, of master's, PhD students. And then we, last year, we got this research grant from CNPq to, you know, further this collaboration. So we had working a lot remotely. So this is the first time that actually I come here and I, you know, visit the facilities, and I'm really impressed, you know, with all the facilities and all the work that you guys have been doing here. And this is just, I don't know if you guys remember Augusto. Augusto was a undergrad student here at Federal of Santa Maria, and he was a student that went to the United States to pursue his master's. So I received a lot of good recommendations, and he graduated in 2023, and he got this award, which is a big thing in the world. This is the IEEE Power and Energy Society Outstanding Student Scholarship. So he got $10,000, you know, to basically invest in his career. And now he's working for a local utility in the United States, Portland General Electric, working power transmission. Okay. Genji, yes, yes. So he's very happy. He has a passion for transmission networks, transmission lines, modeling, design, and he has been working with, you know, one of the best utilities in the United States, which is Portland General Electric. They manage a lot of transmission lines on the west coast of the United States. Okay. All right, so let me talk a little bit about Colorado School of Mines. It is a university located in Colorado. It is STEM focused, science, you know, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And that was founded about 150 years ago, primarily to focus on the mining industry. So that's the name, Colorado School of Mines. But today, it's not only about mining. So we have all the engineering majors, and there's a lot of different areas of research. For example, Colorado School of Mines is the 2nd best university in the world in petroleum engineering. Okay, so there's a lot of different majors and areas of specialization. So here are just some numbers of the university. It was founded in 1874. We have, it's not a big university, okay? So in the United States, there are much larger universities than this. We have about 8,000 students, undergraduate and graduate student. It's considered the best college in Colorado, the #1 mineral and mining university in the world, and the 3rd best engineering college in the United States. So we have a really good reputation to keep, and that's not an easy job, you know. It's very, very hard. And Golden, this is the little town that we are located. We are very close to Denver, which is a major city in the United States. But the city of Golden feels like a small town, like a Wild West small town. Luciane and Lucas have been there, so they remember. We are surrounded by mountains, and we are very close to the Rocky Mountains. So there's a lot of skiing, a lot of hiking, a lot of snow during the winter, but it's a great place during the summer. So this is a picture that was taken during the summer, and there's a lot of hiking. We can hike up there. There's a lot of breweries, a lot nice restaurants, and yeah, it's an amazing area, you know, so you don't get bored, you know, living there. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about artificial intelligence, and I'm gonna show some applications and, you know, some of the work that we have been doing in this area at Mines. So I want to start with this quote. I don't know who knows this guy here, Andrew Ng. He's a professor at Stanford University, and he was the co-founder of Coursera. I took many courses at Coursera, you know, and he has this very interesting quote: just as electricity transformed almost everything 100 years ago, okay, and here we're talking about Edison, Tesla, Westinghouse age. Today, I actually have a hard time thinking of an industry that I don't think AI will transform in the next several years. Do you guys agree with that? Yeah, so AI will change a lot of things, and it has been changing, you know, right now. So I'm gonna start with some questions, okay? And these are very common questions that people have, not just people in universities, research institutions, but, you know, the general public. First question: when you think about AI, what comes to your mind? Can I get some answers? What was that? Learning? Yes, that's a very good one. Yep, perfect. How about the general public? When you talk to your family, friends, maybe ChatGPT, right? That's what they're gonna say. Another question: how can AI be used in electrical engineering? Can you guys think about some applications? Today we're gonna focus a lot on power and energy systems, but can you guys think about other areas where AI can be used besides power? Automation, very good. Control, amazing. Finally, will AI replace professors and universities? What do you think? Yes and no? There's a lot of discussion about workforce, you know, job market, and I'm going to show you some numbers, you know. There's a lot of concerns, right? Yeah. And will AI disrupt the job market? Yes, no, or maybe? What do you think? It depends on the area, right? Yeah. So I can tell you, we are in a good spot. Okay, and why is that? I'm going to talk about why we are in a good spot. But some areas, this is a major concern. Okay. But let me start off saying that AI is not new. Okay, so there's a lot of things going on since the 1950s. Okay, for example, we had a lot of, you know, initial methods, artificial intelligence methods being developed in the 50s. So any technique which enables computers to mimic human behavior is considered artificial intelligence. And in this decade here, we have some initial algorithms being developed mimicking human behavior. And we're going to talk more about them later on. 1980s, 1990s, and 2000s, we had the first machine learning algorithms being developed. Okay, and we're going to talk about them as well. And 2010s until now, we have a lot of new research going on deep learning. Okay, so this is not something that is totally new. It is new if we consider the whole history, right? But since 1950s, we have a lot of research going on in artificial intelligence. So in 80s, we had a lot of expert systems, the first expert systems. 1990s, a lot of neural networks. Okay, so I think your collaboration with Marcelo worked a lot with neural networks, right, in the 1990s. 2010s, we had deep learning, deep reinforcement learning, and I'm going to show you some applications of using deep reinforcement learning in power and energy. And now in 2020s, we have the development or the boom of large language models, such as ChatGPT, Google Gemini, and things like that. Okay? But I just want to say one thing. AI is not only ChatGPT, Gemini, and things like that. So this is just one branch of the whole AI system. Okay? So talking about ChatGPT, look at this. ChatGPT, the first version was actually released in 2016. Okay? This version had about 117 million parameters. And if we want to compare the intelligence of the first version of ChatGPT with a human-like behavior, we could say that the intelligence was comparable to a young toddler, like a 3-year-old kid. Okay? 3 years later, we have the second version, many more parameters, and that the intelligence would be equivalent to a preschooler, like 6-year-old, 7-year-old. 2020, we had the third version, and then we have a middle grader, like 9 years old. 2022, a high schooler. So, ensino médio, 16, 15 anos. 2023, undergrad student, billions and trillions of transactions. 2024, intelligence is compared to a graduate student with an IQ of 120 plus, which is quite impressive. And finally, the last version, we don't know the number of parameters, but it's in the order of 6 or 7 trillion. And then the intelligence is comparable to a PhD student with an IQ of 140 plus, which is a lot. So it's evolving really, really fast, okay? But it's not something, the first version was actually 2016, and not many people know about it. They think it was like, okay, it was like 2-3 years ago. It's actually 2016. And as I mentioned before, there's a lot of different AI subsets, okay? And a lot of people, they think AI is only large language models, but there's a lot of other subsets of AI and different types of application. We're gonna talk a little more about those applications. I'm gonna show you some very interesting video, okay? And I don't know if you guys are familiar with Helix. So Helix is one AI platform developed by OpenAI for sure. And I'm gonna show what happens here with this platform. Have to watch a video first. Gotta watch the whole thing. Yeah. So very impressive, right? So given a set of groceries, the task is what goes inside the fridge, and if inside the fridge, where in the fridge? There's a lot of different compartments, you know, so they have to decide where to place in the fridge. And if it's something it's outside the fridge, you have to make that decision. So it's not just the robotics aspect, all the movements and things like that. There's a lot of thinking, and that's really, really impressive. So one application of, you know, robots like that in the United States, Amazon is using a lot of those robots in the processing of packages, you know, so they can save a lot of money and a lot of time, you know, by using those types of robots. Okay, so let's focus a little bit on power systems. Okay, so this is my airfield research, and we have been working a lot on, you know, challenges and opportunities of using AI. So take a look at this graph here on the left-hand side. So this is the projection of renewable electricity generation. So we are right here, 2025, and what can you see up to 2050? We're gonna have a lot of solar, so we're gonna basically have almost 3 times the amount of solar that we are using right now. We're gonna have a lot of wind. Hydroelectric is gonna be stable, and why is that? So it's pretty flat when we see hydro and geothermal. Why? Is it the same trend in Brazil? There is no more room, exactly. Okay? And think about an investor who wants to invest in a large hydropower plant project. It's getting harder and harder, okay? Because of the environmental concerns, all the permits, all the licenses, you know, it's the same thing in the United States, okay? So it's much quicker to invest in a solar or wind farms, you know, to boost renewable energy. Have you guys seen these 2 curves here? So this is the very famous duck curve, May 27, 2018. And what do we have this shape right here in the middle? And this is California, by the way. What do we have in California? Sunshine and a lot of solar power. So what we see here is during the periods of high solar power production, what happens to the net demand? It goes down. Okay? After we don't have sun anymore, what happens to the demand? It goes up abruptly. In terms of power system operation, what is the challenge here? Ramping, flexibility. Okay? Think about a system to provide this amount of power in a very short amount of time. Isn't it an easy task? What happens if you have a lot of natural gas power plants or coal? Some of those units are not very flexible. So flexibility is a key issue here. Okay? This is from 2023, and this is called the canyon curve. Doesn't look like a duck curve, it's a canyon. So the net demand goes further down. So take a look of the flexibility issues. How can we mitigate this behavior like here? What is one possible solution that we can use? And I can say, I don't have a figure for 2025, but there is one. I was reading an article about it, and this is getting a little better. And why is it getting better? Because we have more storage. Okay, so we can use storage systems to alleviate the burden of power system operators. But what is the problem with storage systems? It's expensive. What else? Think about the footprint. Okay, so do we have amazing technologies for storage systems right now? Well, they are good, but there's still a lot of challenges. And I know NREL has one department just looking at energy storage systems to reduce environmental impacts, efficiency, and things like that. So there's a lot of challenges. And the question is, can we use AI to improve this? Improve flexibility, resiliency, reliability of the system? Yes, we can. Okay? Another concern that we have, and this is a big thing not just in the United States, but also in Brazil, power system reliability, resiliency, and stability. So have you guys heard about the wildfires in the United States, especially California? Colorado is no different. There's lots of wildfires in Colorado. And what are the impacts for the power grid? First, some of the wildfires are caused by power system equipment. Transmission lines, transformers, substation failures and things like that. Okay, so that will add costs to the utilities because they need to do vegetation management. They need to make sure their level of reliability is very, high. Otherwise, you as a consumer can sue the utility company. And there is a lot of financial damage. They have to pay very high insurance to prevent those wildfires. And if there is a wildfire, they have to compensate the customers, right? So it's very, very expensive. In California, insurance, it's a big chunk of your electricity bill. You're actually paying the insurance, the utility pays. Okay, so that makes the electricity to be very, very, very expensive in California. On the East Coast, we have hurricanes and major impacts. So Florida and all the states on the East Coast, they are subject to hurricanes. A lot of destruction, Okay, so it's very expensive to prepare the grid against those issues. And we also have cyber attacks and other things. So this is just a headline from the Iberian blackout. We don't know the cause yet. They're still investigating. It's not 100% clear what happened, right? But if there is a situation like that, what can we do? What can we make sure we have restoration as soon as possible? How can we make sure we prevent those events? No matter if it's a cyber attack, it's a physical attack, how to make sure we go back to the initial state as soon as possible. That's a big challenge. Okay? So thinking about how we integrate control and power. We have to think about system level control for dealing with a different number of contingencies and different types of contingencies. Maybe it's a regional contingency, maybe it's a large scale contingency. Okay, so we need to make sure we have some sort of preventative control before the contingency happens. So we need to minimize the chance of emergencies. And here we can use some reliability metrics. This is like the most commonly used N-1, but there's other reliability metrics people are investigated. So we have to think about generation redispatch, VAR compensation, demand response. And if we have demand response, how do we compensate? So do you see the market aspect playing a key role here? If we have all those services, how can we monetize it? How can we compensate? So there is a need for new markets every time we talk about new services. Okay? And also, during and after the disaster, we have to think about emergency control. So we want to make sure we minimize the number of loads that are impacted. Okay? So if we are to do some load shedding, we have to make sure we minimize the impact in the whole system. Okay, so there's a lot of discussion in the United States is, if load shedding is needed, which neighborhoods do you shed load at? Okay, so I know some researchers, they investigated some load shedding events during hurricanes on the East Coast, and they found out that utilities shed load in poor, low-income neighborhoods first. Okay, and this is like a social thing that we have to consider, right? We have to take into account. There's not only the technical aspect, but also the social aspect, okay? So there's a lot of things that we need to know before the disaster, during and after the disaster. And we're gonna talk a little bit about AI in here. So another set of challenges here is, when we talk about emergency control, we have a lot of requirements. So we have systems, for example, in the United States, with more than 20,000 buses. So you have thousands of control devices. How do we control all those devices at the same time in a very fast and efficient way? That's a big challenge. So all the operations, they need to be fast. Here we're talking about much less than 5 seconds. Some of these devices need to be operated, in milliseconds. And also, conditions, they change fast as well. So maybe you're operating your system considering one scenario, one condition, and that condition may change, you know, very fast. So you need to change your operation, your control set point in order to adapt. So you need to adapt really fast, okay? So today, we can use rule-based control. Typically, they are not adaptive, very time-consuming, you know, to operate and update. We can use model predictive control, but there is issues in terms of scalability and solution time. Remember, we have to do things very, very fast. Or we can also use learning-based or data-driven control, okay? So learning-based, we're gonna talk a little bit how we can use AI here to develop learning-based data-driven control systems. But still, there is some challenges in terms of scalability, security, and adaptability. So think about papers in this area. We have a lot of papers. We tested this system in a 20-bus transmission network. Beautiful results. Everything is amazing. My question is, when we think about realistic systems, do we have 20 buses? We may have thousands of buses, hundreds. So we need to make sure all these new methods, all these new algorithms, they are scalable to realistic systems. Okay, that's a big, big challenge. Okay. So the question is, can artificial intelligence, help address some of these challenges at least? And the answer is yes. So how can we use all the cases of success in robotics, control systems, and translate into power and energy? We have a lot of good progress here in terms of robotics. You know, we have every year, every month, we see a different type of robot with AI system, very, very impressive. So there's a lot of cases of success here. How can we translate this into power and energy? And power and energy is a very broad term, right? We have generation, we have transmission, we have distribution, we have markets, we have different transactions, different operations. And the answer is yes, there is a lot of opportunity. So on the generation side, okay, so we can think about how to dispatch those generators in a fast, efficient way by using AI, and that's totally possible. So there is a lot of research going on control and scheduling. And one of the methods that people have been using a lot is reinforcement learning. We're going to talk more about it in a second. Transmission. A lot of concerns on self-healing, health monitoring, cybersecurity. So this is a very important layer where we can use AI as well. Distribution systems, they are typically non-observable, okay? But there is a lot of research going on doing state estimation for distribution networks as well. Increasing cybersecurity, load forecast, network topology. And right here on the right-hand side, we have the load side, the consumption center. And we can divide into industrial, service, or commercial, and residential. Okay, and there's a lot of opportunities in this layer as well. Okay, so looking at all the AI mechanisms being developed, one that is very common to all these areas, across all these areas, is using reinforcement learning. And we're going to talk about deep reinforcement learning in a second and some of the applications and research doing at mines. And this is a very nice picture with lots of applications of AI in power systems. So for those of you who are maybe looking for a research area, research topic, you want to integrate AI, there is a lot of opportunities here. So this is the list of AI in the power grid operation, control, and sector coupling. And here I want to highlight, for example, can we use AI to speed up the process of calculating power flows? We can do that. Can we combine AI with conventional mathematical optimization? Yes. There is a lot of research going on right here. Okay? So you know power flows, they are typically non-convex, non-linear. Some people try to use heuristic methods. How can you come up with initial points if you have, for example, you're using PSO or any heuristic method? Can we use AI Yes, we can do that. We can use AI with traditional mathematical optimization. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities right here. In distribution grid operations, I want to highlight outage management, okay? And this is a big thing for many utilities. So for example, sometimes they receive a call, my light went out, and then the challenge is how to detect the location of the fault, how to restore as soon as possible. Can we use AI to do that? We can definitely use AI. Okay, so voltage control regulation, fault detection diagnostics, there's a lot of opportunities here. And this is my area, so I can list, you know, these and many other areas in market trading. So think about risk management, market simulation, market clearing. Can we use blockchains in distribution networks, peer-to-peer energy trading? We can do that. And AI is a very nice tool that can be used to facilitate all these market operations, okay? And also on the energy consumer side, in terms of energy consumption, you know, there's a lot of states in the United States right now that they use time of use, electricity prices, you know, and utilities are pushing really hard to make, you know, peak hours to be very expensive, very expensive. Like in Colorado is like 2.5 times greater than off-peak. Okay, so some customers, they don't wanna, you know, use any energy between like 4 and 7 p.m. because the prices are very high. So instead of making those decisions manually, how can we use smart energy consumption systems, energy management systems to help organize my tasks, to make sure I can do everything I want in 24 hours, minimizing my total cost of electricity consumption. So when you look at machine learning methods, we have reinforcement learning, and we're going to talk more about it. The idea is you have the environment, you take some observations, and based on such observations, you have rewards and penalties for your algorithm. Okay? So your training algorithm needs to include observations and rewards from the environment that you observe. Okay? And some examples, we have Q-learning, deep reinforcement learning, that is very hot right now, and some specific tasks, control, scheduling, and this is very important, sequential decision making. We also have supervised learning, and here we need a lot of data to train those models. Okay, so this is like a drawback of supervised learning. If you don't have good data and sufficient data, it's really hard to train, you know, a supervised learning model. And one area that I can highlight here is if you are studying power system resiliency, like wildfires, right now we don't have like a good repository, like a data center where we can download a lot of data from wildfires. We are getting there. As we have more wildfires, we're gonna have more data. But it's very hard to use, for example, supervised learning methods for wildfire events because they are very recent. Okay, we need more data. Examples here, we have neural networks, decision trees, and we can do classification and both prediction regression. And finally, we have unsupervised learning, okay? And here, main applications, clustering, so K-means clustering, this is a very powerful technique. We can also do autoencoders, and this is widely used to identify factor structures, or if we want to do, for example, anomaly detection, this is a very powerful technique. So how can AI be integrated in power grid control systems? So this is a combination of physics, and physics here is the modeling. You need to make sure you have a very good model of your system. You understand the physics behind your power grid. You have a good control mechanism. So AI can be another pillar of this intelligent grid control system. But AI also needs computing. Okay, we all know that to use AI in a very effective and reliable way, we need good servers. We need good computational techniques. So we need good servers, you know, that can enable AI to be a good tool here. So our goal is to achieve technology converging the maximal impacts. So we can definitely integrate AI to be another pillar for power grid control. And this is just another figure illustrating all these pillars. So we have the grid control working together with AI. So for example, we can use data-driven control for load shedding if we have data for doing that. But AI is linked with computing. So we need like high processing computing techniques connected with the physical model, the power grid control, and everything here works together. Okay? We need to make sure we have all these subsystems working together in order to do what? We want to achieve technology convergence to maximize impacts. And these impacts are for generation, transmission, and distribution. Okay? How about large language models? So people ask me, how can I use ChatGPT or Google Gemini in power systems? There's lots of applications. And I know some of you are already doing that. But here are some other applications that you may not have heard before. Enterprise level support and planning. So ChatGPT and Google Gemini can be used to better support and plan utility operations. And I know a lot of utilities are using those large language models for that. Also, engineering studies and technical analysis. I'm not saying that all the engineering studies will be done by large language models. That's not a good thing. But they can be used as an auxiliary tool for those engineering studies. Also, customer service and engagement. We all know that utilities, they receive a lot of complaints from users, right? So they don't like the quality of the service. So how those utilities can use ChatGPT for customer service and engagement? That's a very interesting area. And also access to organizational knowledge bases. For example, asset management, information technology, human resources. So lots of utilities are starting to use ChatGPT for their planning and operation mechanisms. And this is a very interesting data that I got from an international energy agency. Electric utilities using AI right now. So for real-time operation, we have about 75% of the utilities not using AI whatsoever. Only 22% are using AI. And they actually use AI for what? Can you see the legend here? Load forecasting. That's the only application they use AI for real-time operation. So there is a lot of opportunities here in this yellow area, right? Let's see asset operation. So asset operation, there is more use of AI. Okay. This big chunk here is unspecified, but they do activity scheduling. Okay, so scheduling of generators, scheduling of crews for maintenance, repairs, and things like that. Okay, and also auxiliary assistance. So there is more use of AI here for asset operation. How about maintenance? Even more use, right? So we have use of AI for image recognition. Why is AI being used for image recognition? Any idea? What was that? Okay, the blades of the wind turbines. So they can take picture and see if there is any possible failure mode. How about the distribution network? Can you take picture and see if there is a potential hazard? Fault detection. You can do that. Exactly. So there's a lot of, this is like in the United States, there is a lot of image recognition for wildfire risk. Okay? Or wildlife, if there is any animal, bird, or anything that is a threat to the power system infrastructure, utilities, they can do this detection in real time. Okay? So there is a lot of use here for maintenance, but there is still a lot of opportunities. Okay? And finally, grid development. So grid development, we have about 56, 57% of the utilities using AI. And again, what are the areas here? Can you identify something? We have activity scheduling. We have system expansion studies. Okay, for example, if you want to expand the capacity of your power distribution, power transmission, you can use AI for those studies. And here, what you can do is you can model different scenarios. So I can assume scenario 1, we're going to have this economic growth, so we're going to need more demand. And for those studies, we can use AI for these projections. Okay? Additional challenges. This is all amazing, but AI requires what? A lot of power. A lot of power. So we have, this is basically all the subsystems of AI, big AI servers. So we have UPS systems, we have generators, we have, cooling, a lot of energy required for cooling. And we have all those servers, storage systems, network equipment. So we need those data centers that require a lot of power. Is there any discussion here in Brazil about developing of new data centers and conflicts between utilities, federal government, regulatory commissions? In the United States, there is a lot of discussion right now. Okay, some state governments, they want those data centers because it's more money, right? More revenue from tax. But on the other hand, the engineers are freaking out. We don't need more data centers because our power grid is operating at capacity, okay? And these loads, by the way, are 24/7, 7 days a week, okay? It's very challenging. So this is the projected electricity consumption by data centers in different regions. So you can see United States, we are right here. So look what's going to happen in 2030. And 2030 is 5 years from today. It's not a long-term projection. It's just 5 years. So it's going to almost double it. Same in China, Europe, and other regions. Okay, so and when we see the electricity consumption per capita, you're going to see it's also very, very impressive, the projections for future years. So there's a lot of people concerned about this. So you can see a lot of headlines. And when I was living on the West Coast, that was a big topic. There's a lot of data centers being proposed in the West Coast, especially in Oregon and Washington. Because they said there's a lot of hydropower plants here. So data centers, no problem whatsoever. But what we are seeing, especially in Oregon and Washington, the summers are getting drier and drier. There is no water. So same issues that we have in Brazil with water, okay? So during the summer, the power grid is operating at its limit. So they need to redispatch, they need to purchase solar power from California. And all these discussions about load centers, data centers, So I recently saw this news. Oregon House passes bill making large data centers pay for power grid costs. What does that mean? If they want to install a new data center, they have to pay for all the infrastructure that is needed. And they need to pay extra if extra energy is needed from other states and things like that. So they want to make all these data centers pay for the cost they add to the power grid. Okay? And this is the headline that I got from NERC from last week. The power grid was never designed for this. So here we have a lot of AI campuses being installed in the United States. So look at this one in the Northwest. It's 1,000 megawatt. It's a lot of power. It's a lot of power. Can you think about the size of a power plant to produce 1 gigawatt of power? Is that a small hydropower plant? Many of them, right? So, looking at this power grid transformation and how AI impacts the system in both positive and negative ways, we may be back to the age of Edison Tesla and Westinghouse to build a new power grid. So now we have to think about how can we reshape the power grid considering all these new loads that are being introduced into the system. Can we use the conventional tools that we have been using for the last 100 years? Do we need to think about other mechanisms? You know, so remember, this guy, his idea was totally outside the box at that time. Everybody thought he was crazy. He is crazy. Using AC, it's dangerous. You want to use transformers? That's ridiculous. You know, and now this is what we have been using for, you know, for many, many years. So we have to think about how we're going to design and operate the power grid considering all these data centers and all these new types of loads. Okay? So another thing is AI and the need for qualified work. So there's a lot of concerns, as I mentioned before, of people being displaced by AI tools, okay? The impact on the workforce. But I can say something from this very interesting report. This was published by Stanford University. And they say there is a rapid increase in AI model complexity and size. So the models that we have being developed are more complex and they are bigger, they're larger. And that will require interdisciplinary collaboration and workforce skilled in math, computer science, engineering, ethics, and domain-specific knowledge. Which means to develop new AI models, we need workforce. We need engineers. Okay, so we are going to be needed for this transformation. Okay, so maybe some of our colleagues in other departments will be more affected, but we are going to be imported in this transformation. Okay. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Global G1, they published like interesting, you know, headline about workforce impacts of AI. So they basically have 4 different categories, okay? Category 1, not very affected. Category 4, almost everybody will be affected. So they say, it's not I am saying this, but they say electrical engineers won't be much affected. Well, I cannot agree 100% with that. I think we are going to be a little affected, but not that much compared to other categories. Okay? So I wouldn't consider non-exposed here. Maybe some exposition. Maybe some of our colleagues will be impacted depending on what they do, but not compared to other professions and careers. So this is a very nice tool. You can go to the website and you can type, for example, contador, eletricista, and you can see in which category they're going to be classified in here. Okay? So university professors are also good. Okay? So we won't be impacted, hopefully. Okay, so let's talk about some applications of AI at Mines. So I'm going to start off talking about this course. We developed this course last year. It's AI for Power and Renewable Energy Systems. So one of my colleagues at Mines, he developed the whole course. He has a lot of expertise. He worked at Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, PNNL, working in AI for Power and Energy Systems. And he developed the whole course. And last year, I taught this course for grad students. And this is very nice because we combine traditional machine learning, deep learning, and we have direct applications in power, such as renewable energy forecasting, EV charging optimization, anomaly classification. So the final project of this course, they are given some data on EVs, and they have to come up with the charging optimization strategy using a select list of topics that we give to them. So this is a very nice course that we developed at Mines. We also recently developed, and this was developed by one of the professors at Mines in the computer science department, it's our internal ChatGPT. So students, they can use this platform, it's called HiTA, where they can use to help their learning process. And how does that work? There is some protection mechanisms. For example, they have a project assignment. They can ask some questions to this platform. The platform will give some hints, but the platform cannot give the final answer. So there's a lot of protection that is built into this platform. And you may be wondering, why do we have this if they can use ChatGPT? Any idea? Why develop your own large language model for the university where students can use freely? Any idea? Why spend time and money on this? So we did some research with our students, and some students, when they use ChatGPT, they feel guilty. They feel like, I'm cheating, I'm doing something wrong. And if we provide a tool where they can freely use it for their learning process, they feel more confident. So they feel like, oh, I'm gonna use this, I'm gonna improve my learning, and then I don't need to feel guilty because this is actually a resource provided by the university, okay? So what we saw is a lot of people, when they solve projects and assignments, they move from ChatGPT to this tool because they feel like they're learning and they're not cheating. ChatGPT might give the final answer, right? But it's like, okay, I got the final answer, I don't know how to solve the problem. But by doing this, they get some hints, some steps, so they can figure out by themselves how to come up with the final results and all the steps. Okay, so this is a very nice technology that is available to all professors at Minds. And here are some research applications. So here I'm just going to highlight some of the research that we have been doing at Minds. And by the way, the faculty that leads all these research efforts is Dr. Chihua Huang. As I mentioned before, he worked for PNNL, and he's the leader in AI at Minds. So for the folks that will be visiting Minds, hopefully later this year, I'll make sure to introduce you to this faculty here. So some of the research areas, we're using, AI deep reinforcement learning for load shedding and emergency voltage control. So the idea here is to simulate different types of contingencies, different types of weather events, and how can we optimize load shedding using deep reinforcement learning. Okay, so this is a good strategy to find exactly what loads will be shed and how we can minimize the system impacts. So some of the simulation studies were performed on a 300 bus system, okay? And we got really good results, but I'm gonna show some challenges. So when we first simulated in a 39 bus system, it took about 2 days. So scalability is key. We need to make sure all these models are scalable to large scale systems. As I mentioned before, realistic power grid networks, we have hundreds, thousands of buses. So we need to make sure we can solve in a reasonable amount of time, okay? So think about it. Typically, IEEE bus systems we have, this is, I think it's the maximum, 300 buses. And then we have synthetic networks. So Texas A&M University, they develop synthetic networks, and the maximum number of buses we have 3,000. But for the Western energy, system in the United States, we have more than 20,000. So, okay, I simulated for 300, but would that work for 20,000? That's a very important question. Okay, so scalability, don't forget that. For those of you who are working on research, scalability is key. Okay, especially when we see this trend of power grid, conditions being changed so fast. We need to make sure we can run all these operations in a short amount of time. Another application, physics-informed deep reinforcement learning to increase training efficiency and control robustness. Okay, so this is a combination of physical model of the network, so we can model the power grid partially, and we can integrate that model in a deep reinforcement learning control technique to increase efficiency and control robustness. So this was another project led by Dr. Huang, and he got some very interesting results here. I can show you more data and results, but the idea is he found out that if you have a very well-designed deep reinforcement learning platform combined with power systems, you can improve your control speed and your reliability operations, with significant results. Okay, so he compared the proposed method with other methods in the literature, and he got really interesting results. So this is a project that was 100% led by Dr. Huang. Also, another application, doubly fed induction generator performance and fault scenarios. So this is, for example, a very interesting case of fault detection, diagnosis, and prognosis of induction generators using artificial intelligence. Okay, so you can add another layer. So this is a typically control scheme of a doubly fed induction generator. So what he did is he developed a control mechanism that can detect fault in the system. And this fault, depending on the type of fault, will cause some impacts on this generator. So this platform can understand what is the fault scenario, and based on the fault scenario, take some control actions. Okay, and again, this is something that requires a very speedy control. It has to be very, very fast, very precise, and then it will minimize the overall impact on the system. Okay, that was another project led by Dr. Huang. And finally, this is a more recent project looking at improving inter-area damping control using HVDC. So this is high voltage DC transmission lines and FACTS devices. Okay, so they were looking at using AI to make sure we have faster research control. And in the case where we have a high voltage DC network, how can we make sure we can reduce this damping here? How we make sure we go to steady state as soon as possible? And the same thing when we use flexible AC transmission lines. So we develop basically the same platform that can be used for HVDC or for flexible AC transmission networks. Okay? Is there any discussion in Brazil on using more high voltage DC? Yes? What is the issue right now? Okay. Yeah, that's a big issue in the United States as well. As you know, West Coast, there is a lot of offshore wind power potential. So I lived in Oregon, Washington, and if you see, all the winds and the weather comes from the west to the east. That's what we call the jet stream. And the wind speeds offshore, like 100 miles away, are very, very high. So there is a huge potential. But what is the problem? We don't have big consumption centers close to those offshore areas. So the challenge is how to bring the large amount of power to the shore. Can we use AC transmission networks? There's a lot of losses, a lot of impacts. Can we use high voltage DC? Yes, we can. But there is also these challenges that they are studying. Okay? So we see a lot of potential, but we still need good technology to enable this potential to be true. So some of the conclusions of this presentation overall. There is a lot of opportunities to leverage AI successes in other domains to power systems. So as I mentioned before, robotics, control, automation, we see things that are really impressive in those areas. Can we take advantage of all those technologies, all those cases of success, and bring to power and energy systems? Yes, there is lots of opportunities. Some areas that we need to focus, we need to look carefully, include reliability, resiliency, and stability. By the way, what is the difference between reliability and resiliency? Is there a difference? Yes? No? In terms of operation. So when we think about reliability, we typically talk about low impact, high probability events. So those are those events that have a higher probability of occurrence, but the impacts typically are lower. Resiliency, on the other hand, we have high impact, low probability. So when you think about a hurricane, probability is low. Why? Because you don't know if there is going to be a hurricane and what's going to be the direction, okay? But if there is a hurricane, what's going to be the impact? Massive, massive, okay? So think about the rain that you guys had last year here, right? The impact was huge. But what is the probability of having the same event next year or this year? It's getting higher, right? It's getting higher. But yeah, we don't know. So yeah. Also, these pillars, they need to work together. Physics, control, AI, and computing, they need to work together. So we are having an experience in this project. We are planning on using AI for VPPs, but what is the challenge? We need to have good servers, right? And they cost a lot of money. So this is a big challenge. We need to have powerful computational tools to use AI efficiently, okay? So we need to focus on those challenges, and I wanna encourage you guys that have been looking for research, focus on the challenges that we are, you know, facing right now, because in those challenges, you're gonna find a lot of opportunities, okay? And finally, we're gonna need qualified people to address those challenges. And if you're planning to use AI, we need people behind, you know, all the learning, all the processing to make sure we can use AI very efficiently. Okay? Any questions? So I'm gonna open this space for questions. And on Wednesday, we're gonna talk more about collaboration, opportunities, and things like that. But happy to answer any questions, and pode ser em português também. I'm starting. So I recently joined Minds, was last year. So now I'm starting my research area and starting some collaborations with some folks at Minds and outside Minds. So Dr. Huang, who I mentioned, he's the leader in terms of AI research at Minds, and we have started working together. So the first big project that I had was to teach that course, you know, in AI. And then that was very nice experience for our students, and now we are starting to do some research together. And I want to integrate AI in my core area of research, which is energy markets. So I see there's lots of opportunities for energy markets. Yeah. Yes, yeah. So I can speak a little bit about data. When we talk about power system resiliency, for example, all the California utilities, they are required to store and publish data on wildfires. For example, if there is a wildfire, they are required to publish, you know, bus by bus, what was the impact, and also on the distribution system, each node that was impacted. So people are starting to use that data to work on some models focused on wildfire resiliency. Same with hurricanes. We have more data available right now because it is required to have the data available. On the distribution grid, there is a higher number of smart meters, okay, that are being used. For example, in my home, we have a smart meter, and some utilities, they can use that data for research purposes. There is a concern about privacy. Yeah, this is a big concern. It's people fighting all the time, okay? So in theory, utilities cannot use that data for, you know, trying to see if you're home or not home, you know, for privacy concerns. But I think they are allowed to use data for research and development, you know. So, and we have some good data repositories in the United States being developed by some universities. So they have, for example, some communities and some projects that are given to universities. So how does that work? the researchers, they partner with some local communities, and they are allowed to use that data that they get from the communities for research purposes. Okay, so for example, they want to develop a smart village in a rural area of Arizona. So they get some money from the federal government, they partner with the local community, so they installed, for example, a solar system, they design a like a VPP system or energy management system, and they can use that data for, for research and development. So there is more and more data being available for research, which is a good thing, but it's still a big challenge, it's still a big challenge. There's some areas of research that there is no data available whatsoever, because, yeah. What else? Yeah.
Doctor, first of all, congratulations for the presentation. I have two questions. One related to how is the relation that you guys have in Colorado School of Mines with companies like OpenAI, let's say, and Google that are, let's say, on the front line of the research on the reinforcement learning algorithms. How do you bring this technology, this research, let's say, into the power grid research? And the second one is, I don't know if there's like some research on that, but on what about the mini agents, mini AI agents for power grids? Because there's a lot of talking about like the high costs of data centers, but there's also some research on, let's say, local low-level agents, right, on local control systems that can like operate in, let's say, finding the optimal control action, but locally,
Okay.
not taking this information from a data grid. Is there anything on this side? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm gonna start with the second question. So about the, yeah, this is I have been seeing some articles talking about it. Some utility white papers also talked about it, but I haven't seen anything implemented yet. So I haven't seen any like practical case or pilot project where people were doing that. There's a lot of discussion, but nothing really practical or already implemented. I think it's a good possibility, to alleviate the burden of the big and massive data centers, but right now it's just under discussion, not implementation, I would say. Yeah, and the first question is about companies and universities. So one thing that is interesting in the United States is all the big companies are located there, right? So Google, Amazon, OpenAI. And what do these companies need? People. So they need good people, good students. So there is a very close collaboration between universities and industry. And the main reason is they need good people. They need good, engineers to work there when they graduate. So they typically partner with universities they are interested in on research projects, and by the end of the project they can recruit some students to work for that company. So for example, we at Mines, we have good partnerships with Google. We have very nice partnerships with NASA. NASA is an institution that gives Mines a lot of money. One colleague in my department, he got $1.5 million research grant to develop or to study microgrids in space. So he's gonna, study the feasibility of developing microgrids in space. So he got like this big grant from NASA. And so all these companies, they are interested in people, and they typically is not us that go to the industry, is industry that come to us. Oh, we need people. How can we partner together? How can we do projects together? Okay, there's also some issues because some of these projects there is confidentiality, privacy, so we cannot actually have access to the core data, but we are trying to work closely with those, industry companies to develop more and more partnerships because we need them, we need them. We cannot work only by ourselves. We need to do something that is actually going to be used in industry. Okay, so in terms of power and energy, we have been working very closely with NREL, and NREL has a lot of partnerships all over the world, okay? And also, we have been working with utilities in the area. So the big utility company in Colorado is called Xcel Energy. And Xcel Energy is amazing. They have so many microgrids, so many applications where we can partner with them and participate in those projects. You know, so that's the idea. Any other question?
I think they have lots of questions, very nice, but it's difficult to.
Is anybody working with AI in your research? Or plenty? A little bit? Yeah, I would say a good start is some machine learning. You know, there's lots of good machine learning algorithms that can be integrated in terms of load forecasting, for example. You know, so in my research, I worked a lot with stochastic optimization and programming, and the key thing is you need to have good scenarios, right? Stochastic programming, you can only get good results if you have good scenarios. And you can use, for example, machine learning to generate scenarios. And once you have a large number of scenarios, you have another challenge. You have to reduce the number of scenarios. You cannot have 10,000 scenarios. So you can also use machine learning for scenario reduction. And then from 10,000, you get, let's say, 250 scenarios that are really representative of your system. So there's lots of applications. And if you guys want some literature and some material, I can provide some material. There is a very nice report, by the way, that was published by Pacific Northwest National Laboratory on AI opportunities in power and energy. So it's basically they describe all the possible opportunities in different areas, generation, transmission, distribution, and how different types of algorithms can be used in all these areas. So it's like a 100-page report where you can find a lot of ideas for your research. It's very, very nice, very nice. I know that finding a good research topic it's a first challenge in your PhD, right? So, yeah. Any other question? Yes. Sim, mas... Sim. Eu entendo. Esse é um desafio grande. Eu acho que agora a gente tem mais disponibilidade de dados, mas até, sei lá, 6, 7, 8 anos atrás não era tanto. Então, aí o que a gente tentou fazer o máximo? Não só eu, outros pesquisadores, mas a maioria dos pesquisadores que eu sei que trabalhavam com dados, ir para as empresas, para as agências, para as concessionárias, e apresentar a pesquisa, como que a pesquisa pode impactar eles de uma maneira positiva e ver a parte legal da coisa, né? Então, por exemplo, que nem a gente pode assinar, por exemplo, lá é muito comum nos Estados Unidos assinar um NDA, né? Non-Disclosure Agreement. Você usa os dados, mas você é proibido, você não pode divulgar, você não pode compartilhar, o uso é restrito para quem assinou, para os membros do laboratório. E você tem que apresentar a contrapartida, né? Então, assim, ninguém vai te fornecer dados que podem ser sigilosos se não tiver uma contrapartida para a empresa, para a concessionária. Então, essa é uma estratégia que pode ser adotada, né? Então, é mostrar o valor da pesquisa para a comunidade, o valor da pesquisa para a concessionária, como que isso pode ajudar eles no futuro. Mas eu realmente imagino que para áreas bem específicas de pesquisa, os dados vão ser bem escassos, né? Então, essa foi uma das motivações para o pessoal da Texas A&M desenvolverem as redes sintéticas. Então, por exemplo, os sistemas que a gente tem do I3E, eles, para alguns tipos de estudo, eles são legais, mas para outros casos, eles não são assim muito apropriados, né? Então, o professor, não sei se vocês conhecem o Thomas Overby, é uma lenda lá de Power Systems da Texas A&M, ele trabalhou só com o desenvolvimento de redes sintéticas para fazer estudos bem específicos. Por exemplo, eu quero fazer estudos de estabilidade. Qual que é um bom sistema para eu fazer esse estudo que vai ser robusto para a maioria dos sistemas? Então ele trabalhou só nisso e aí gerou dados que são dados que a gente chama de dados sintéticos, né, mas que já ajudam muito para a pesquisa, né? E aí é ficar ligado. Outra dica assim, é ficar atento, porque cada vez mais a gente vê dados sendo liberados aí para várias aplicações, né? Por exemplo, esses dias eu vi um pesquisador que no fim do projeto de pesquisa dele, vários dados de smart meters de vários tipos de consumidores assim virou domínio público depois que a pesquisa dele foi finalizada, e aí virou domínio público. E aí você, nossa, com esses dados você já consegue fazer bastante análise legal. Mesma coisa de carros elétricos, já tem bastante coisa disponível. Esses dias me mandaram aí uma plataforma com dados de carregamento de carro elétrico, assim, de vários países diferentes. Fiquei impressionado com a quantidade de dados que foi gerado, assim, de comportamento de motorista para diferentes situações, sabe? Como é que o motorista se comporta quando está um dia de gelo na pista, e aí você consegue ver informação de consumo, e é bem legal, assim. Então, cada vez mais a gente vê dados sendo disponibilizados, e assim, acho que a estratégia que eu falei é tentar chegar nessas empresas que teriam os dados, né, e tentar apresentar uma contrapartida, né. Eu não sei se vocês já fazem algum tipo de NDA com algumas... Isso já é possível, né? Sim. Aham. Sim. Então, lá em Mines, acho que 80% dos projetos de TCC são financiados por empresas. São empresas, né? E aí, a gente tem que assinar NDA para os alunos de graduação fazer um projeto, né? Porque lá o TCC, como é que funciona? As empresas, elas financiam o projeto. E aí, parte do valor que a empresa injeta vai para o grupo de alunos para eles desenvolverem o projeto. E muitos desses projetos são bem confidenciais, então a gente tem que trabalhar nessa parte jurídica aí por algumas semanas antes dos alunos começarem a... A ética, ela é, para nossa acreditação, então todos os programas de engenharia, eles têm que ter de 5 em 5 anos, eles têm que ser aprovados, acreditados, né, pelo um órgão específico. E a ética é obrigatória. Então, assim, a gente não tem algumas universidades têm uma disciplina específica de ética. Por exemplo, a Washington State tinha uma disciplina ética e engenharia elétrica. Mas em Mines, a gente integra a ética dentro do TCC. Então, tem um módulo dentro do TCC que os alunos têm que avaliar os impactos de ética no projeto que eles estão participando, né? Então, esse é um ponto bem importante. Isso. Exato. A gente faz toda essa integração na disciplina de TCC, que na verdade, o TCC é um projeto mesmo, então eles aprendem gerenciamento de projetos. Durante o TCC eles têm que utilizar uma ferramenta de gerenciamento de projetos, e aí toda essa parte de ética, a parte jurídica, eles estudam também em TCC. para ver que tipo de contrato eles podem assinar, qual contrato que parece legal, mas na verdade é bucha, entendeu?
Esses dias também, esses dias a gente foi utilizar um laboratório que tem na universidade, e foi apresentado para um aluno um documento para ele assinar, né, esse sigilo. E aí ele entrou em contato conosco, né? Professora, eu nunca assinei isso, você posso assinar? O que é isso, né? E aí a gente começa a ter essa visão de que nós mesmos também temos que ter esse treinamento, esse entendimento, né, do que o aluno pode ou não estrear. Eu realmente não sei, né, não tenho essa informação se vale. Uma coisa é assinar, outra coisa é valer, né?
Sim.
Só assinar por assinar, se valer não adianta, né? Escolher, olha, não tem contato com a coordenação, não tem contato com a coordenação de eleição, enfim, que possa dar uma orientação. São coisas que a gente, né, pode trabalhar.
É. Exatamente, é. Exatamente, é. É sempre importante ter um diálogo bem aberto com quem está fornecendo esses dados, né, para ver se eles aprovam. É porque, assim, para a gente, a disseminação dos resultados é extremamente importante, né? A pesquisa, ela só avança se os resultados forem disseminados, né? E aí você consegue ter um processo de evolução, né? Você publica aqui, aí o pessoal melhora o trabalho, expande o teu trabalho. Então, a disseminação é extremamente importante. E é importante que eles façam parte disso também, né? Então, se incluir essas empresas na parte de disseminação dos resultados é fundamental, né? Acho que é. Mas se eu puder ajudar com algo específico, eu posso verificar se tem algo que possa ser útil aí para a tua pesquisa. Sim.
Pode ser em português agora?
Pode. Pode, fica à vontade.
Surgiu uma dúvida agora, justamente sobre essa questão questão que a professora Luciane levantou, sobre a questão de ética. Surgiu uma dúvida aqui, né? Não sei se tem pesquisa nisso, se tem experiência com isso. Como que se integra ética e moral, por exemplo, na função recompensa de um agente de reinforcement learning, de aprendizado por reforço? Existem trabalhos desse sentido?
Olha, essa é uma pergunta interessante. Eu nunca vi nenhum trabalho focado assim nesse aspecto mais ético da coisa, mas é algo que é interessante estudar, né? Interessante analisar. Nunca vi. Eu acho que esse é um tema legal, poderia ser interdisciplinar, né? Por exemplo, a gente toda vez que tem uma pergunta de ética ou de comportamento humano num processo de tomada de decisão de engenharia, o que a gente tenta fazer lá é colaboração com um departamento específico, às vezes de psicologia ou filosofia, antropologia, para entender melhor como que as nossas ações como engenheiros, né, podem, ou ações técnicas, podem criar impactos positivos e negativos, né. Mas, por exemplo, um exemplo que a gente fez colaboração é, por exemplo, quando tem queimada, né, lá principalmente na costa oeste, quando tem, por exemplo, algum risco de queimada ou já tem uma queimada existente, os moradores recebem uma mensagem de texto, um alerta pelo celular, dizendo se eles precisam evacuar a região ou não. E aí o que acontece? Tem gente que sai, né? Tem que ficar com medo, tem gente que fica, fala, não vou ficar aqui, não tem pra onde ir e tal, e se é pra morrer todo mundo, vai ficar aqui. E aí a gente submeteu um projeto para entender como que as pessoas elas reagem a um alerta de evacuação. E para entender se elas tiverem um carro elétrico, para onde que elas vão, né? Se o carro está, sei lá, com 25% da bateria, eles vão recarregar primeiro ou eles vão direto tentar para o lugar mais longe possível. Então essa questão do comportamento humano na tomada de decisão pode afetar significativamente projetos de engenharia, por exemplo, onde que você coloca uma estação de carregamento se você precisa ter uma situação de rota de evacuação, entendeu? Isso é bem importante, principalmente num cenário onde a maioria dos carros vai ser elétrico. Se eu precisar ter uma rota de evacuação, será que a minha capacidade de carregamento atende um cenário de evacuação? Né? Se todo mundo precisa sair dali, todo mundo tem carro elétrico, né? Pensa nisso. E como que as pessoas vão se comportar? Isso, a gente como engenheiro, a gente às vezes não pensa muito, né, no comportamento humano da coisa, mas isso é um típico exemplo onde a gente pode fazer, por exemplo, uma pesquisa multidisciplinar com outros departamentos e eles podem ajudar porque eles têm técnicas e ferramentas que a gente não tem acesso, não entende, né? Então, esse é um exemplo legal. Acho que tinha uma pergunta lá.